here with
Andre Anakin.
I met him in my freshman year summer because I'm friends with Ariel Soren, and he invited me to his birthday rave. And then he's like, "Yo, me and the bros were going somewhere," and actually that where we were gonna park in that trail. I was walking around that trail for a while. It's like, "Yo, bro, get here!" So I ran from the top of the trail all the way down and met you guys in your car, like.
Yeah.
And then I got in Mr. Andre's car, and we went to Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
And then, well, we went, and then the truck, Ian's truck came, and we dragged the generator up the side of the mountain. And then
that was so fucked up.
Yeah, and then we set up for the first rave I've been to. First party, rave, anything. And introduced me to this awesome gentleman, and an inspiration to me, honestly.
Thank you.
Just from, and he's going into his third year of college.
Yeah, at this point.
I'm going into my first year, but we're actually only 1 year apart.
Yeah, believe it or
Funny
not.
enough.
Because I'm younger from my grade.
And I'm older.
Yeah.
So we meet in the middle. What made you you? You were gonna start young, start high school.
It's a pretty broad question if you ask me.
Yeah. It's like major. I had major points that I look back and like, oh, that made me this way.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a big event. If you want to go into that.
Of course. I mean, of course. I feel like I want to live my life like I'm an open book essentially. I don't have very many topics that are kind of like, taboo or off topic. I try to just be, I read this book, Electrically Acid Test, and they talk about bringing everything out front, just like not coverting not obscuring yourself or obfuscating yourself, but just being completely who you are and just like not caring about the consequences of honesty. But I kind of digress a bit. I suppose to start, I was born to a family of Russian immigrants. I was the first person in my family to be born in the United States, and I was born in a city called San Jose. All you East Coasters probably don't know where that's at. It's Central Bay Area kind of. And I was born there. I lived the first 6 years of my life there, and I did not know a lick of English. I didn't know jack shit, and I refused to learn English. I thought English was stupid. I hated people that spoke English, and my parents just threw me into the American high school or American public school experience. And there was this girl there. Her name was Masha, and she knew both languages. And so she is the one who taught me English. She, served as like this translation bridge between me and the rest of the world. And it was quite funny. We were in kindergarten. We got like married on the playground and everything. But I'm getting sidetracked.
Question: was this the inspiration to your Masha demo?
It is indeed. I wrote that song about her. Which
that one,
is a trip.
I was like, wait.
Yeah.
I know that one.
It's a trip. I did write that song about her. Her real name was not Masha, it was Katya. But I think Masha is more, I find it to be like a more romantic, beautiful name. Because Katya is like the Ava of Slavic names. But yeah, so I moved to Santa Cruz when I was 7 years old about. And then, lived here for a few years. My parents ended up splitting. Moved in with my mom primarily here in Scotts Valley. And, that's pretty much where I had my real rise to consciousness, I suppose. When you stop being like a one-track minded child and start thinking about things outside of yourself and outside of your identity and everything like that. The kind of natural pubescent intervals of middle school where you start considering the fact that you're not the center of the world, you're not the only thing that exists, and you start considering yourself in context with other people, and everything's feeling awkward. So I was here in Scotts Valley for that whole thing. And middle school was strange, just naturally. A fucking middle school. Like everybody could probably tell pretty strange stories about it. But I ended up meeting some really beautiful people there, and then transitioned into my high school experience. I got in trouble a lot in school. It started in middle school. I fucked around a lot. I resisted authority very strongly. I had a very stark opposition toward authority and figures of power. And it earned me a reputation among teachers, among the administration, and I would get suspended and I got suspended twice in middle school, both for bullshit reasons. One of them was for posting offensive content about teachers I didn't like on social media, which I do regret. It was, somewhat mean. The second one was I drew a pentagram on the ground with water bottle, and Principal Lonhart, wherever she may be, she ended up suspending me because she perceived the pentagram as a symbol of hatred against her religion. Which is a trip because the pentagram actually originates in Christian mythology, and it's been appropriated by certain occult groups and whatnot. But I digress again. I got suspended for that, and then COVID happened.
When did COVID hit for you?
COVID hit for me when I was in 8th grade while I was suspended for drawing the pentagram. So my COVID experience was 2 weeks longer than everybody else's. During COVID, I ended up meeting my lady friend, who I'm still with to this day. We've been together for about 5 years now, El Morris. Got out of COVID. Still had very strong problems with authority. I kind of, you remember that. I transitioned into the punk rock thing. And
yeah, I do remember.
Yeah.
You were more punky.
Yeah. I
was like, oh, okay.
Kept getting suspended. But I think the only reason that the school really kept me around is because I was part of the International Baccalaureate program. I was one of the, I think 12 kids that was in the IB program. And for those of you that aren't hip to that, it's kind of like AP, but it's way more anal, and the credits do not transfer to American colleges. And so I essentially received a useless diploma that only works on the other side of the pond. And I'm kind of just like an IB diploma holding student. Anyhow, that was a trip, and the school kept me on. I graduated, but around my my sophomore junior year, I kind of started realizing a big problem with how I with people around me, and I suppose with my peers, and those that I wasn't really choosing to spend my time with, but those that I still perceived, I started perceiving people's lives, and I started noticing something quite disappointing, saddening and almost sickening, is the fact that it feels to me, and this might be as a result of logical fallacy and whatnot, but it feels to me that we're losing some kind of authenticity in ourselves. We're surrendering to fast dopamine. We're starting to easy release because it takes energy to be an individual. It takes energy to be nonconformist, to have your own ideas, and dress the way that you want to dress, and speak what's on your mind, and it takes time and energy to develop an opinion in the same way that it takes time and energy to develop a plant from a seed, and it feels like people aren't really taking it so seriously anymore, and people are preoccupied with these things, this slop essentially.
Yeah, instant dopamine.
And I know, obviously, I can't say that I wasn't victim to that myself, but it's just, I guess, you read Ray Bradbury, and he's been talking about this shit since the 50s, but I don't know, it's for some reason, to me, and obviously I'm it's a time fallacy, I've only ever known this timeline, but it feels like this process is accelerating very, very rapidly. You hear all the geezers talking about this shit all the time, it wasn't like this when I was your age, this and that, and so I don't want to, come off that way or come off pretentious to make myself seem better than everyone, because I don't think I'm better than anyone else, but it is just disappointing to see that, I took the train the other day. It was a 6-hour train ride from San Jose to Sacramento, maybe a little bit shorter than that, but I was just watching these people in front of me, and they were the entire time just constantly, just continuously on a scroll, and it was complete just slop, AI generated content and just superficial shit for hours, and I feel like the human intellect is too evolved and too developed to be devoted to this shit. I mean, it's become a fucking religion at this point. You know what I mean? It's a trip. I look at it, and I more than anything, I just trip out, But I guess the reason why I started talking about this is because I had a couple very revolutionary experiences around that time with, mind-altering compounds and, altered states of consciousness, the psychedelic state of mind and everything. And I don't want to be that guy that's like, dude, I took an acid trip and my whole world just changed, man. But it was I didn't necessarily see anything new, but everything that I knew was recontextualized in a sense that gave it originality in the composition of thought. You know, so it's like I didn't gain any new insights or awakenings, but like my knowledge that I already contained within my dome was restructured. And I realized that I was wasting my fucking time on social media. I realized that I was consuming useless shit that was like cramming up my brain. And I thought about mortality, my own death, and I realized that, like, you know, we're here for such a short time, and it sounds like a very cliche thing to say, but that time period of my life, the sophomore, junior, and senior years of my high school experience, you know, those were only a few years ago for me. They were extremely seminal in, you know, making me what I am today. They were the crucial, like, time points, and it was because of the activities that I was engaging in. It was the people that I was meeting, and, you know, the way that I lived my life, but it gave me new ways of looking at the world that make me who I am. And one of the most crucial things, in my opinion at least, was kind of like I had a realization that, you know, again, I hate to be diving into these cliches, but knowledge is power. There's nothing more powerful than having knowledge in your fucking dome, you know. And I started reading these books, and I guess I hate to continue this cycle of yapping, but I'm just, you know, I'm wired on caffeine and everything. But when I was 14, my grandma gave me this gift card to Barnes and Noble, and I was like, you know, I was like, thanks, Grandma. But in my head, I'm like, seriously, I'm a 14-year-old, and like this is the, you know, like I'm not gonna read a fucking book, dude. Like what? Like what are you talking about? And so I sought out to buy the most like offensive piece of literature I could find in Barnes and Noble, and so I bought the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, and I bought the Anarchist Cookbook. And essentially, the Anarchist Cookbook is you know, it's very flawed in a lot of its recipes, but it teaches you how to synthesize explosives, firearms, and, you know, controlled substances, and teaches you how to make weapons, you know, all this stuff. And so I was like just flipping through that. But the one that really got me was the Satanic Bible. And, you know, it sounds like, you know, super edgelord and everything, but when I was that age, I was very resistant to religion, and I kind of saw it as a big, you know, enemy of the people. And I started reading this book, and I kind of started reading it as a joke, but furthermore, I became so captivated by his language and the fact that his philosophy was so accessible, and it was like it was essentially the first like non-fiction or philosophical book that I read. And since then, I feel like I've changed a lot in my views, and I don't really support express LaVeyan Satanism or anything, but it was really the book that got me into reading, which is a trip because it's a fucked book. You read the first half of it and it's like philosophy, and then you read the second half and it's just like kinky sex rituals. And I digress again, but it's like fucking that shit got me into reading, and I started reading really heavily around the time that I started experimenting with psychedelic drugs, and that completely altered the way that I value everything in life. I mean, it introduced me to so much more than I would have been introduced to otherwise, you know. And I think that is a major turning point in my life, is when I really started reading and writing and appreciating the written word and language as a whole, because language is one of the most language is one of the topics that I'm most passionate about, to say the least. But yeah, to answer your question, a very long-winded history statement. And
I know you write, and you wrote an album that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Like what was that process? Like when did that album like fester inside of you and had to come out?
Yeah, so I started writing that album, Pools of Light, I think when I was 15 years old, and I started out with really just like simple guitar, and half of that shit didn't even make it on there, you know. But I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't receive any I received a little bit of formal training in guitar, but not really, you know. And I'd never really recorded my own music before, and here I was just, you know, making these like songs. And soon enough, I kind of like found a style that I quite liked, pulling influence from a couple musicians that I like, you know. Slow dive, primarily. I really like slow dive. A little bit of like Crystal Castles in there, and it was just like I wanted to find a fusion between two things that I hadn't seen fused before, and so they were festering from the time that I was like 16 to 15 to about 17. I want to say. I released it when I was in Europe, when I was in Germany, and I was just finally just like fucking pumped it out. I'm like, I'm over this shit, you know. And so that was that. And I'm in the works of another album right now, but I got a couple different projects of interdisciplinary nature, so it's like kind of, you know, I need to find time for everything.
At one time we went to San Francisco.
Yeah, dude, that was fun.
And I tried to go back, and they had that all locked up and everything.
They patched it?
They patched it.
They always open it back up though.
But it was, and they're like doing construction there. Like
Yeah, fuck, dude.
But so like that.
You must have gone on a bad day.
Yeah, but that one time we went, it was just like perfect.
That was
you know?
beautiful.
It was eye opening. It's like going to that weird like rave at the skate park.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was just eye opening to me.
That
and
was
so
such a trip. You know, I was hearing these fucking like radio anchors the other day talking about this shit. They were like, you know, concerts have changed. People are, you know, people view concerts as a way to express themselves rather than enjoy the music. Like people are, you know, dressing up and they're posting and they're making it about like paparazzi culture and shit. And I'm like, it's kind of true. Honestly, it's kind of true.
A little bit of that, yeah.
But I don't necessarily see that as very like authentic. But I think that like spontaneous experience, like meeting strangers, being exposed to subcultures that you'd never even dreamed existed, like these things they feel raw. And I think when you experience that, when you meet somebody that has pure like authenticity, as if it's like coursing through their blood and radiating out of their like center beacon like that, you can like when you meet somebody like that, it becomes like a rush, you know, of finding the individual in the collective, you know. It's a fucking trip. And I think that you'll see that a lot on the East Coast, which is why like, you know, I'm pretty hyped for you to go there. I think that you'll have experiences there that you will remember for the rest of your life.
Because I hated my grade because I was older than them, and it never worked. I've never liked my grade.
Yeah.
And so I met the grade above me, and I was like, wait, these people are awesome. And then there's a girl I liked, and so like I focused like all in on her, and so like kind of saved my reality from cynical, like, you know, nothing matters.
You went down a path of cynicism because of Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
Sick.
it's not a great thing to like, I hate admitting it, but like,
no,
honestly,
I respect
that's
you.
what
I respect
happens.
you
Like,
for that.
I have really nothing, and I'm watching this show about, you know,
It's a very existential show.
multiple
honestly.
universes, especially the early seasons.
Yeah.
That
That show's a trip.
And it's like, yeah, I think Rick was like, yeah, nothing ever matters, like, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
And that blew it up for me. And then I was like, how are you ever gonna go back to care? Like, once you realize that nothing matters.
You can't take that information out.
Yeah.
You know?
And so I was like, I'm never gonna be able to go back.
There's no way that you can just imbue the world with this like higher meaning or anything like that. But if your world exists through your own perception, and you can modify or modulate your own perception, then you can modulate your world, you know. And in that sense, it's real. But the only distinction that I have is that it's not all-encompassing. It only applies to myself, to my inner like microcosm. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's the point where the existentialism gets a little bit strange for me. You know, it's like it becomes individualistic as fuck. You know, it's not like everybody is under like God's commandment, or everyone is under this like united purpose of life. You know, everybody has, and this is again has been said a million times, but everybody has their own like thing going on, and what matters to you does not matter to somebody else at all. Morals are not a real thing. Ethics are not a real thing. They're all incredibly subjective. There's no such like flatline thing, you know. That you can say like murder is wrong, you know, but you can't really say that and have it be like a logical truth, because there are so many people out there that believe that murder is like can be a right thing to do. There's people that support the death penalty, you know. There's people that support homicide in war, you know. And so in those cases, all of a sudden murder isn't wrong, you know. And so there's no such thing as morals if people can't agree on something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of like the conclusion that I came to after, you know, kind of diving deep on this like existential shit.
And that's why I've always secretly liked, you know, exploring abandoned places, but I don't have the heart to break in and trespass. Like, I can't do it.
Why not?
I don't know. I just don't call me a square. Like, I did it. I've done it.
He's done it.
But
He's done it.
But I can't.
Let the record show. Let the record show. He is not a square.
It's just can't like fathom
Yeah, no, it's pretty fucked,
the,
especially in
like,
Russia, bro.
trouble going
Yeah.
through. I like
Low level of telepathy, in my opinion,
Yeah.
when you're creating art with someone. You know, you're syncing up with thoughts, and then you have a collective vision. You know, but it's more fragile. You know, because it's more like liable to create differences and everything like that. But when it comes to individual vision, like I can describe to you as perfectly as I want, like this a beautiful scene or something like that. But when you create that scene, inevitably it won't live up to how I imagined it. You know, it doesn't matter if it's better or if it's worse. It just won't be the same as how I imagined it. You know, and that's the trip, because the only person that can know what you're thinking and how you see something is you. And like the boy Aldous Huxley like talked about this in The Doors of Perception. He says that every experience and every feeling is that unless by second hand through symbols and through language, it's at first hand it will never be communicable. I will never be able to give you my feelings or to give you my perceptions or my thoughts or anything like that. I can just give you a hint of what the inside of my mind looks like via this imperfect vessel of meaning as language. You know, and that shit's a trip, dude, because when you start thinking about everything that way, it feels very lonely, that you are an embodied soul. Like your soul is going to be trapped inside of your body. You cannot share that with anybody. You can, you know, try to with words and languages and like experiences telling people about their life, but at the end of the day, you're essentially doomed to be lonely in the fact that you can never express truly what it means to be yourself to somebody. You know, and that shit's a fucking like trip. Like, talk about existentialism. Like, that shit will make you sad if you think about it too much. But at the end of the day, it also becomes beautiful, because if communication was flawless, if I could transfer those feelings to you, there would be no incentive for me to create artwork. There would be no reason for me to paint or to write poetry, because I could just convey exactly how it feels without it being interpretable. But it comes from a French author, and I remember I was talking to a monk, a Buddhist monk, and he was like hip on the Cocteau Twins. And this guy he's probably the most intelligent man I know. He operates a tea house in Santa Cruz, a hidden tea house off Pacific, I mean. And yeah, he's a trip. His name is David. That's right. And he's a Buddhist monk, and he's just like randomly was just hip on like the Cocteau Twins, and he's super wise, and he corrected me like that, bro. Like he's like, oh, you mean that? And I think I'm still mispronouncing it, but that you would fuck with that guy, dude. He doesn't know how to use a computer. He's never used a computer in his life. Never. That song that I wrote, Buried by the Pond, it's written about this pond right here. I had a dream about it where I was like dead, and I was like, I had died, and I was, I was with some girl and this and that, but it was so strange. I was dead, and my soul was walking in the world, and the world was essentially devoid of everybody, and it was empty, and time stood still in like a warm, like midnight, like starry, like celestial kind of atmosphere with blue, like starlight, and I was walking all by myself, and just like nakedly walking through this field of tall grass by myself, and it was just so strange, and it felt surreal as hell, and I ended up writing that song about it. But another reason why I wrote that song is because I was like playing around with like this like synth preset that I had, and I was like, this is like, you could make literally anything with this shit and it would sound sick. And I made that song in one night, and I was essentially like kind of made it as a joke, like you can make anything with this preset and it sounds like kind of alright. And then I just like kind of threw it in the album as a joke, and that tended to be like my most like popular song, Not saying that I'm like this like crazy musician or anything, because I only have like 80 monthlies, but like that song has like a few thousand listens now, and it's crazy because I almost just didn't include it, But it's written about right there. Like my dream is that I walked like around the crescent right there. When I was in freshman year, I had a crush on the biology teacher. It was fucked, man. But she was beautiful, and she was just so graceful. And she took us down here for a field trip, right?
Mhm.
And I was such an attention seeker. I jumped in the lake with all of my clothes on to try to impress her.
Oh goodness.
Fucked up, dude. And I spent the rest of the day in class just soaked. Fucked, man. But I don't regret that for a second. Thank you for letting me be in his interview. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be put on tape and recorded, and maybe this will be found 1,000 years from now, and people know what a common person looks like in the age of 2025, 6. I don't exist in the recording of time these days, man. I'm just over it all, you know. I'm just over it all. I need to transcend this imperfect body and go somewhere else, you know, where I came from, something like that. You know, it's the spirit of like rambling words. You know, you gotta just like be with it sometimes, you know. But what I was saying earlier is, thank you for putting me on your show and letting me speak my nonsense at you for a bit. Look beyond yourself. Find what is true. Escape the simulation of what is put directly in front of your face to discover the deep, rich, diamond beauty of what it means to look for authenticity, what it means to be authentic, and to see that shit, you know, rather than be living in, you know, Plato's cave of all these fucking puppets dangling in front of your face. You know, I can't stand that shit. So go out there and fucking find those people. Find the people that are saying, you know, speaking their truth, the schizophrenic spitting poetry on the bus stop. You know, find those people and talk to them. Listen to people's life stories, you know. That's real shit. That's life, you know. My name's Andre Anakin. It's been a pleasure talking with you.